This is the Lekker Rugby Pod with Harry Jones and MV Welman.
It's a Lekker Rugby Pod, episode 19. Gets better and better. Harry, you and I were both at the game, opposite sides of the stadium. My wife was also there on the other side of the stadium, so it was like a whole family festival, but far apart from each other. How was your game?
Oh, yeah, I loved it. On the way to the stadium, driving in the car, as you get closer and closer, like Dante's Inferno, you're going around in circles and you get to almost near there. And I just rolled down my window just to get some air. And this car pulled up beside us and four guys rolled down the window and they go, "How's it, Harry?" And I went, "Oh, that was cool." And they wanted to know what was going on. There's no place friendlier, wilder, more, I think the Kiwis said it, feral. It was a feral atmosphere. And only at Ellis Park will, a flyover by a Boeing be obscured by smoke and so much noise that literally on our side of the stadium, we didn't even see it.
I didn't see it either. I was waiting for it. They said, "No, it's gone past already." I said, "What the hell? I missed it." How can you miss an A380? I mean, really? And we missed it. I didn't see it. I didn't hear it. I wasn't even aware that it was there. So yeah, that was a funny one.
The only place I've ever had that much deafening noise in a rugby context was in France, Stade de France, for the quarterfinal. That was the most deafening place I've ever been, and Ellis Park gives it a run for their money. I love the setting. Once you're in and you're there and everything's good, I had to sort of go through a gauntlet of people offering me to come into their house and take a piss, and I was like, "Yo, I'm not sure that's how this thing ends." So I'm like, I'll say politely no, but I will pee on your flowers. But yeah, once you get in there, the setting is unbelievable. I've been there before. A long time ago, and then actually played a game there once a long time ago. But you don't get a full appreciation unless you're high in the stadium and you see all the buildings behind and you realize you're really in the mecca of South African rugby. And boy, it's a very learned crowd. Like they cheer for the right stuff. They're animated the right moments. It's got to give our guys an extra leg and an arm. It has to.
No, I tell you what, I've never been there. I was apprehensive. As you know, I actually decided at one stage I'm not going to go. I was worried I'm going to get robbed on the way there or on the way home or whatever. And then when I realized Cornelius also going, my wife's also going, I said, "Listen, now she can't go, and then I don't go." So we went there, and then I ended up driving through Hilbra because Google Maps takes you there. The shortest route, not necessarily the best route. And and everybody was just happy. It was Springbok jerseys and everything. I mean, the closer you got, the more intense it got. And then you got stuck in that. We were 1 block away, and it took us half an hour to travel that 1 block, And then we found our parking spot that we were allocated, but someone else took it in the meantime, like South Africa does. So we parked in someone else's spot, and then we didn't know how to get in. And everybody was helpful, and they actually guided us the wrong way, the right way. And then we walked into that media box, and as you walk out that media box and you walk into the stadium, I was blown away. I tell you, I've never experienced, me, I'm a Loftus boykie, Loftus loyalist, if you want to call it that. But man, that place has got an atmosphere, and I couldn't believe it. The way that it is so much smaller than I imagined it, because we watch it on TV, it looks like this immense thing. It looks like the stands go up, into the clouds, and that's not that big. It's very steep, like almost curved. You sort of like a shell. And as I'm speaking, I get goosebumps all over again. And then they started singing that anthem, and like I said, we missed the plane. And the only thing that was a bit of a downer for me was the fact that the haka was a bit disrespected. But I see they've now officially apologized to New Zealand. Did you see that? Because of it was just a question of mistiming, whatever, no disrespect intended. I didn't like that, and clearly it wasn't meant to be, and I'm sure it won't happen this weekend either.
In an age where I think you're supposed to be perpetually outraged, it just takes a lot for me to be outraged. I'm sorry. I think everyone's trying to take too many things the wrong way. I imagine it's pretty hard to time a flyover, and it's probably pretty hard to time 5,000 million pounds of smoke that went off in front of. I mean, the whole thing is just a choreograph's nightmare. No, it was a great scene. Like, we ran into Bismarck du Plessis on the way in, and he thankfully graciously scrummed with us as a front row, Rian Lowe and he and I. Boy, that guy is still just stacked. He's shredded. Not an ounce of fat on him. He looks like he could just move a car in there, just, "Hey, I'll take it in for you." They were like, who's who walking around. I thought the vibe was spectacular. I actually wish, if there was a thing I would wish for, is could we be a little bit more like some of the other sports where you can get more of the visiting fans in? Just set aside a few more tickets because it would be nice. I literally saw 2 All Black fans the entire time I was in there.
Yeah, I saw one.
And there was some really annoying Cape Crusader guys behind me, and I gave everything to them, and Grant Williams scored. I mean, I just fingers, toes, because all match they were in my ear, and it was just giving me a migraine. So no, overall, I would say everyone had a good time except for the All Blacks in the end. But I don't know. Everyone should go. There's things you miss by being live, right? But what you don't miss is being able to tackle your mates when we score and almost fall down the steep stadium of Ellis Park. You get the feeling of the gain line, of who's winning the gain line more palpably, more viscerally than you do on TV. I think you can see positioning. You can see where Fassi is in relation to Sasha, and you can watch the interplay of Jasper Wiese and where he's going back to line up kicks. And I think just this overall feeling of mutual goodness. Maybe it's tribal. Maybe it's from some echo of how we used to live as humans, Homo sapiens. But it's bloodthirsty. It's great. You feel aggrieved, you feel wronged, and then you feel righted. One thing is for sure, that walk out of there, I was doing a pod mortem, as I call them, and they were almost doing a post mortem of me. It's not the greatest place to be doing a 30-minute stand-up. I was using the police lights and graffiti as was my reflection. A lady who was wearing a sailor's captain, like a captain from a ship, was tackling me, and there were just people just jumping in. So yeah, it would have been terrible had we lost. I mean, so the downside of going to a game live and then you lose is, you suffer so much more.
I was happy I didn't have to have that conversation with you. There was a while that I thought that we're going to talk about, why did we lose this one at Ellis Park? What went wrong? Thank goodness we pulled that one out of the fire. I want to say something. I want to jump ahead a little bit and work it back from that. The one thing that I noticed, the one thing on Sunday morning when I watched the game on TV, and like you just said, when you're there, it's a completely different experience than when you're watching it on TV. When I watched the little clips about the anthem, I got more goosebumps watching that when I was at the stadium, because you could see the people's faces. When you stand there, you sing, and the one thing I noticed, everybody's saying full blast, whether you can sing or not, doesn't matter. Sang the whole song, you sang all the words, which I think is important. And then when I saw the video and I saw the people playing, the emotion that I got, I every time I see it, I get tears in my eyes. But anyway.
We all cried. I mean, we were singing it, and we formed the front row, and we cried while we sang and closed our eyes. I don't know. I know what you mean, though. So were you in the press box, though? You're like a real journalist now. So you were cut off maybe from the feral atmosphere.
No, it was on the stands. You go out of the press box into the stands. You just have your own little table. So I was right there. I'll send you a picture. I mean, I had the best seat in the house, I think.
But you know what's interesting, MVA, is the visitors always talk about it too, that even the visitors get choked up. Like there's something very emotional. Maybe so the French sing their anthem every 5 seconds. I call it anthem wankery because they just keep doing it forever. I think they just sing it like as a matter of course when they're bored. You don't really sing the South African anthem unless it's like time to sing it. But the fact that it goes through the sweep of history, that it incorporates different languages, dialects, that it imagines a past, a present, and a future, it's definitely one of the best anthems in the world. But when it's sung at Ellis Park, when you're about to meet your old enemy, and it's for everything, it's to prevent them from drawing the record 26-26 in South Africa, and now we got a 2-game edge. I don't know if it gets better. I don't know if it gets better in an anthem sense. Maybe there's someone out there that can correct me. But no, I don't think anything smokes our anthem at Ellis Park against All Blacks.
Well, I wanted to ask you that. I didn't want to ask you this. I just thought of it now. You were both Loftus and Durban and Ellis Park. Now, which one was the best? Which anthem?
It was Ellis Park. I would say between Loftus and Ellis Park, it's whatever, 1 centimeter.
Yeah.
The most emotional one for me was at the World Cup, though. It was something about so many people far from home. It was something about people who had come back from somewhere in the line to get a ham and cheese sandwich at the World Cup, when you'd say, where you from, you wouldn't really always hear Bloem or Potchefstroom or something like that. You would hear from Auckland, Toronto. And it was something very interesting about coming home to that place. And also because the crowd is more split, you feel like you have to sing your part. But as far as being bathed by sound, Ellis Park, I mean, it just generates, I'm not even sure what it is. You think it bounces off the buildings, but there's something going on there where
it's that shell.
Maybe Loftus goes out into the wind more.
No, definitely. No, I just thought that lady at Loftus, remember we held up the microphone. And I always thought, yes, everybody singing it next after her is going to struggle to live up to hers. But this Sasha Davis did well. She did really well. I mean, that just blew me away. Yeah. And I get goosebumps as we speak right now. Anyway.
Sitton Cars has a wide selection of vehicles available at sittoncars.co.za and at our branches at Casino and Menlyn. With over 30 years of trust and excellence, Sitton Cars is your #1 nationwide dealership. With over 95% customer satisfaction, our hand-picked cars will ensure that you find your dream car from one of the top brands available at Sitton Cars. Sitton Cars, the better way to buy and sell cars.
What I was getting to just now was the fact that we've talked about it. The Boks were not at their best, but they still managed to win it. And the one thing that stood out for me in the entire game was after Grant Williams scored his try, Peter Steph's body language. Wasn't happy, wasn't jumping up and down, wasn't like, phew, we made it. It was like, okay, done. Sort of, they never thought they were going to lose this game. You can see that. And sort of when he scored the try, okay, there it is, we won it. And that to me made the difference between this Springbok side and the All Blacks. The Springboks were never in any doubt that they were going to win this one. It doesn't matter how far behind they were. Am I right or do I read it wrong?
I never felt like we were going to lose it. The time was always our ally. I always thought if you're down by 10 with 11 minutes, and so let me think about this. As an agnostic, skeptic type of person sometimes, I would go, why would I believe, There was evidence. So, being quarterfinal, semifinal, final, pretty much the same group, except the coaches did trust, some young fellas to start in the most important match, Ben Jason Dixon, Sasha Feinberg, Ngomazulu, Fele Fase. These guys were dropped into the cauldron, but around them was a structure that believed in themselves. What Sia Kolisi said was, this wasn't the worst we've seen. This wasn't. And I thought the same thing in the stands. But it was a tribute to poise over passion. It was a tribute to patience over, power. It was something about, precision. Almost like a boxer who may not have the biggest punch, but always hits the button. So the chin, whips and you go. There was something about clinical about it. When we used to lose big, 2016, 2017, we always heard the guys come out and say, we've got to be more clinical. We developed chances, but we were not clinical. We were clinical. Like, I just thought, no, clinicians are on the field. These clinicians know what to do. There is I'm gonna talk about Handré Pollard right now because I think it's important. I just said a lot of P words: poise, patience, and precision. Handré Pollard does organize things when he comes on. It's not that he's doing everything in the world, but a whisper in the ear of Sasha helps. The NBA has this fascinating stat that says it's hard to know just on stats on what people do. We want to see that when you're on the floor in an ever-rotating sport where you can exchange people, what combination of team goes plus minus against the team? And then you have 82 games and you have 48 minutes each with shot clock. So everything is very measurable. And it turns out sometimes surprisingly, but not surprisingly, who is the best plus minus player and who's mid-range and who's not as good as you thought they were. Handré Pollard, if you just go back in your mind and say, when he's on the field, what does the score look like? Just go to quarterfinal, semifinal, final, and then go this year and think about it. The guy knows how to win. Peter Steph Totoy is a guy that even if he himself is not scoring, he's doing the things that help. So I didn't really feel nerves. I felt anger. I felt frustration when we were not exiting. I felt like we got into a hole because we were not doing precise poise, patience. we were launching attacks from deep within, trying to do offloads from the ground in our own 22. Even the exits that came, Fassi's exit when he did a mark was terrible. It got 10 meters. Just terrible unbuck things. When did you ever see a buck team rush a mark kick out when you're under pressure and not exit? So as far as coming back from 27-17, I kept saying before the match, I kept saying during, and I kept saying after, they have to get to 30 or we're not beaten. If they had gotten to 30, I would have started to sweat. I just always thought we would score 30 plus. Before the game, our friend Johan and you and I did some predictions. They were not far off, right? 34-30, 36-32. We knew they would be scoring. I'm not sure why we knew that, but we just knew they would be.
Okay, let's talk about players, individuals who made it, didn't make it, almost made it, sort of made it, didn't make it at all. It's like one that comes to mind immediately is Ben Jason Dixon. You and I sang his praises. You analyzed him in detail. He had a tremendous games against Australia. On Saturday, he was yanked after 38 minutes. What went wrong? Do you think it was yanked? Rassie said it was to give Peter Steff a bit of a rest so he can go to 7. That sounds off to me. What's your thinking?
Yeah, so winning a game when you don't have your A game, it's like what Tiger Woods talked about. You know, he won the US Open one time with his B game, and it happened. You can do it, but you don't really have much margin for error. And Ben Jason Dixon was committing errors. Now, I want to say a thing here, which is that if you have the bomb squad set up anyway, then you have more margin for error for replacing forwards who are not at their A game. And whereas it's, more difficult when Fassi or Sasha makes a mistake, you keep them on because you really have to, until very late in the game. All three players, let's say the three young starters that were given roles that you probably wouldn't have predicted before, Fassi, Sasha, and Ben Jason. All of them made errors. In fact, all of them made quite big errors. The thing about errors is you cannot judge an error by only what happened on the outcome. Like I make an error, I do an offload to Jasper Wiese, it looks on. If it sticks, Jasper's going to be hard to bring down with that kind of speed lead up, but it doesn't stick. Then it leads to a try. So do I think that that's a bigger error than someone missing a tackle, but then it gets covered up, or you miss a kick because you don't get the shot clock and it comes down to a 2-point game and you lose the match and you go back in time and say, Sasha, why didn't you manage the clock? We're back in Monty Lidbok territory. I don't think coaches do that. Coaches don't say the error was worse because it led 3 phases later to a score because Jesse Creel shoots out of his line, misses, and my wing misses as well. So you have 2 shooters. You have Cheston Colby. Colby and Creel shoot out on the same defensive set. You've created an overlap. Is that Ben Jason's problem? So I do think we look at errors sometimes in a wrong way, like line-out errors. That being said, they were errors because he was pushing too hard and probably wasn't part of the game plan. What I like about the errors, what I love about the errors that Sasha, Fassi, and Ben Jason made is they were errors of enthusiasm. I've worked with people, I've managed people before where I couldn't get them to push. And all the errors they made were of sloth and lethargy and having no ideas and not trying to win. And I will beat my head against the wall before I have one of those guys working for me. But I do like the guys who sometimes go too far, who maybe cut a few corners, they're trying to win, and they make a mistake. I will always reward those guys. So Ben Jason Dixon's effort game against the Wallabies turned out. It was one of the best matches you'd see. Then he comes against the All Blacks and he tries a little bit too many things. I'm still working with him. He's still on my squad. Maybe he's a bench player against the All Blacks in Cape Town, but I'm going to put him right back in the saddle because I don't want to lose his fire. But I am going to tell him, young man, son, there's quadrants on the field and you don't have to make Storm or Bull happen at All Black level in the test because they're going to punish you. This is not playing, Glasgow. This is playing the All Blacks. Fassi made some mistakes, but what I liked about Fassi is, he gets carded, which is kind of a huge error, guys. And so we know who won, so it's okay. But it's not okay because you're presenting pictures to a referee that are unnecessary. Like if he takes one sideways step, it makes the same tackle. It's a double movement tackle. It's beautiful. One of the best defensive plays of the game. If you get lazy and do a shortcut, you get carded. So I think there's plenty there to work with. I just love the faith that the coaching staff put in those 3 young fellas to start. It's sometimes easier to be El Regelo coming off the bench and someone just goes, hey, run like with your hair on fire, or you're behind. So now we need you to take some chances, do an offload because we have 10 minutes left. But starting, it would have been, it would have been something. And I don't think that the pack was ever outplayed by the All Black pack. Not even for 1 second. It was bad exits. And who are the exits? Who are the exiteers? You're 10 and you're 15. And you're 9. So there's plenty of blame to turn around. I would think inside the Bok camp, they're not analyzing it like that. They're taking it just like I did with involvements. Let's look at the involvements. Hey, Ben Jason, here's where you didn't need to do that thing. You just recycle, reset, and go. Or you're saying, hey, game manager, why are you passing the ball to Ben Jason Dixon instead of kicking it out right now? The All Blacks built a 10-point lead by exiting the ball immediately. They never worked for an angle. They didn't chance anything. It was just Damien or Bowden smashing the ball out of there. When the All Blacks started losing, they had trouble exiting. So it was literally one of those games where he who is exiting is losing. And so, I have no problem with Ben Jason's game overall in this year. I have obviously I see the same things that happened, and I think that's a good coaching staff. Take him aside. Hopefully they put Dwayne next to him and just said, "Here's what happened. We're with you. Cannot wait to get out there again."
Yeah, this is the guy who just got his industrial engineering degree while playing for the Springboks, or finishing the Storm of his season. He's going to go home, sit, think about it, analyze it, and come back a better player. I've got no doubt about that.
Yes.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
But the one other player that also made his debut almost, definitely against the All Blacks, and nobody was singing his praises because he's not flashy. He's not Ben Jason. He's not Sasha. He's not fussy. But to me, maybe it's my blow on a rock hanging out, my blue undergarment hanging out again. It's Ruan Pienaar. I think he had a tremendous game. I mean, he was on and off and injured and head impacts and go off and come back on again and just delivered. Just that diesel engine never stopped for one moment. And also intelligent player. What did you think of his game?
Yeah, I think he was of the Bocklings, we'll call them, the young Boks. He was the best. He was the lineout captain. It's not just a debut against the All Blacks. You're calling the line out. I don't care who's not there at the All Blacks. Like, I don't care that Ritalik's not there and Whitelock's there. They always have a quality line out defense. They always trying to pinch the ball. They're very good at getting 2 jumpers in the air without losing their towers and their push. They're very good at the maul. They're very good maul defense. It's a proper pack, the All Blacks. So Ruan, I think, holds your head high. If you were grading that thing, he would grade above Fassi and Sasha, because I haven't done it, but I would probably think he has less errors. He also had to come on, come off, and it looked like every time on my plus minus thing, it looked like every time he was on, he was good and he helped things. And there's something to be said for, in a team sport, adjusting our metrics for the style of game it is, almost a militarized, salients and encampments and trenches and aerial bombardments. It's very difficult to statify rugby in any meaningful way. It's just a difficult game. Ruan would have been high on the charts if you were doing some kind of effectiveness as a lock marking, whatever that is. Even if you look later and say, what the many carries, I don't know how many times he hit a ruck, doesn't really matter. He was a tower of strength, and he outplayed Dari, he outplayed Tupou Vai, and he outplayed Scooter Barrett. What more can you what more can you request from the young fellow?
Yeah. You know what? I've said it before, that day of the USC final when he came into the press room, and I think I sit right at the back because the Glasgow guys were still talking. He was on his own. He had to face the press on his own. I felt so sorry for the guy, but he stood up there and he manned up to it. And I just thought to myself, man, in Afrikaans is a saying, I'm going to translate directly. Quiet people, there's a man going past, I saw that.
Yeah.
And I said, he should never be the captain because it takes away from his game. But without having that responsibility, he just shone. I don't know what the word is. So just talk to me quickly. I want to talk to you about, you talked about the warfare, the bombardments and everything. I want to talk to you about the generals a little bit later, because I think at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. Because the All Blacks had a bloody good general in this game. He knew how to take this game. And it wasn't the general's fault that they didn't win this game. It was these replacement troops that cost him the game, let's be honest. But I want to talk to you about quickly Sasha. your rating of Sasha, our headline for the 8-9 post mortem was is he the real deal or what? And he's the real deal. He made many mistakes, but he just, I think he just shot the lights out.
He's happy. But it's hard to describe it. I just look like he's having fun. And when you think about what that was like to be 22 years old, and then you have the weight of a nation, the expectations, you're the much vaunted guy. Everyone's talking you up from the time you're 14. You're a captain of the under-20s. You're expected. A lot of people have furrowed brow. A lot of people have, throwing up on their mouth on the way. I'd always play with guys who threw up before they played. I don't think Sasha does that. He's probably putting that super white toothpaste on. And, he's like they said, an industry drop. He looks like someone you have to sign him up right now. Like Nike should be giving him the 10-year contract. He just seems unfazed. He tries things. He puts the ball on the outside of his foot. He tries to do, some sort of like screamer, like a 2-iron, and just smack it and see if that, and it worked. Will Jordan's fumbling it. Boom, we got a scrum. It all leads to something. Where he's got the stones, where you just saw that he had, big, pollard bulls, was that final kick out. I'm going to tell you, from my vantage point, I thought we had just lost the game. I thought he had bitten off too much, because early in the game he was being too delicate. But when it counted, crunch time stats, when it really counted, he threw everything out the window and he said, "I'm gonna stick that thing right in there with a power fade," and that led to ultimately the winning try. So I'd say you judge a guy like Sasha or any game breaker, game winner guy, you judge him on how crunchy it is. When it's the most crunchy, are you the most calm, the most deadly, the most clinical? I would say yes. He's going to make some errors. And to Rassie's point, he wants to see them now. Like, let's get them out the way. So, yeah, I think he had a good game. I think he also is interesting because, he's definitely a KP boy. He's definitely all the way, bishops and all that. But the crowd seems to like him wherever he is. Even at Ellis Park, he was the darling.
Yeah, until he plays with the Stormers, but that's another day's game.
But I think that matters, right? I think the All Blacks was always wrongfully positioned as the best global brand. But that, it's a small island. It doesn't have as compelling a story as South Africa. South Africa bleeds drama. It's like, I posted a video of a band singing at a place called Moo Moo in Pretoria on a Sunday night. And like Ben Karpinski said, our country is a movie. Like, there's just, when you now look at the current Springboks team and you look at a guy like Sasha, even his name, Feinberg, Zulu, the thing is already a Hollywood movie. There's enough characters to take it higher with the buying power, the interest. The Springbok brand should be the best brand in rugby. It should supplant the All Blacks. It should be better known. It should be known everywhere. It's got a better story. It's got better personalities, big personalities, swashbuckling personalities. Like running into a guy like Bismarck. Look at that guy's name. Look at his story. Like, everyone's just got a story. There's the quiet guys. The Peter Steph Toys are probably not going to like being a Hollywood character, but there's plenty of guys who do. And I think Sasha is the kind of, we look at 5, 6, 7 years from now, if he can hold it together and be this kind of guy we think he can be, yeah, that's global branding. And that benefits everyone. Rising tide, right? More merchandising dollars, more ability to sell, more opportunities for the Boks to play in more places. So I love it. I'm all about that hype because he seems to like it. I don't like hyping up a guy where you can tell it's uncomfortable and you're setting him up to fail. I don't think he cares. Quite frankly, I think you just need to put him in challenges and see how far he can go.
Hey, as we were speaking, I just got the notification that SA Rugby is going to sign that $1.3 billion, oh, sorry, I'm lying, 1.3 billion rand equity deal with Achilles in America.
Yeah.
You just talked about the strength of the Springbok brand going global. There we go. There's the proof of the pudding is in the eating. Tell me what you think about that.
Well, beggars can't be choosers. So if we are continually, perpetually out of money, when we have to act like it. So when there's something on the table, we have to negotiate well and get it. This is the avenue in which you'd want to put your mercantile energy, is global branding. Because when people fall in love with you in Japan or in Britain or in US, they buy your stuff. The expansion of that, the goodwill assignation allows you to borrow better on better terms with better interest. You can find more pathways for people in the Eastern Province, the areas that don't get found. You don't have to only rely on the familiar Paul Roos, Paul Jim, Gray Bloom. Like, you can find people that are able to jump and run and kick and find holes in defenses. It all takes money. That's the thing. And so there's a few ways to get there, but branding yourself around characters like Sia Kolisi, who has grown outside the familiar rugby, restrictive rugby PR. It's fantastic. Sia can show up at a game, the New York Knicks in the Madison Square Garden, and gets a standing ovation. That's what you want. It's not like being Vinghat. It's not saying that you're better than everyone else. It's that you're creating a pathway where people behind you will make 7 times what you did and go, thanks, Sia. You're old man now, but thanks for doing that. There's a particular leverage that happens. When my dad came over to South Africa and was paid New York salary to do nuclear engineering for South Africa, but paid at that level, that's the margin you want. And there'd be a much more of a margin now. So you want to get revenue based on different markets, but still able to cost it at local levels. And then you're able to leverage things, and you can refurbish stadiums. You can you can change things that need to be changed. But if you don't take those deals, you take some terrible deal, with someone from Dubai or something.
The one thing I said why we won't do 7 Nations because of CVC. CVC owns 6 Nations. Yeah. We're not going to. That's the one.
It's tough. Yeah.
All right. I want to talk to you about, before we go, about why New Zealand lost and South Africa won. What did New Zealand do right? How did they catch us out? I know, especially the beginning, they seemed to expose us on the edges. Fussy tackled his heart out, like you just said in the beginning. What did they realize about us? What did Scott Robertson, as the general you referred to earlier, what did he see, and how did he expose what he saw to basically, put us to the test there?
So we had become reliant on a few things in playing against the likes of Ireland, which Ireland is obviously a very fine team, but it's good in a different way than the All Blacks. Even though the All Blacks don't play us in Super Rugby anymore, and they don't encounter that sort of uber physical, off the charts physical nature of a Jasper Wiese running downhill at you like a snorting buffalo, they do have the ability. I'm sorry, Tamati Williams looks like he can handle a buffalo, and they have enough. It's not enough in the end over 80 minutes, but it was for 62 minutes. It was good. And there's no scrum demolition going on against the All Blacks, just none. I do think we were a little bit shortchanged there because the referee would actually stand in the mouth of the scrum too late to prevent the hit. With the hits come back in rugby, you look like 10 years ago there was a monster hit, then they took that away, but it's come back in. It comes back from a bind, but it's still a now proper hit. And so we wanted to hit because we knew we had a little ascendancy. I thought France in the end did have Tamati. And Ox was making inroads on Lomax, but he wouldn't let us do the hit because he was standing there in front of our guy feeding the scrum. And so, but there still wasn't obvious dominance. So the whole year you're using that, and then you come against the same scrum that was stymieing you, stalemating you in the World Cup final for a reason. That's taken away. You try to run a maul. I mean, we had some success, but a lot of those were stopped. And they ran a maul against us, and it worked. You can say it was illegal, probably was. But as we now know, the TMO was out taking a piss or talking to Bismarck. He wasn't watching. Yeah. So we got luck both ways that way. My point is, we were relying on certain things happening, and then those things weren't happening. And the All Blacks were kicking clever, and they were kicking out. and they were keeping a tidy game. All they were doing was feasting off errors. So they're just waiting for the error, and then voila, there it was. It presented itself on the ground. There's a ball, and then it was just a matter of enticing the rush D. And we did make errors. We made errors. We might have got into some bad habits against the Wallabies, who we could shred a little bit. Create 9 chances and then score 4. And that ratio does come back to haunt you against the All Blacks, because let's say you try it. Well, they converted. They were converting. It was just simple moves, an overlap. Caleb Clark goes and scores. He should have had 3. Ethan Blackadder didn't give to Caleb Clark on another move, and that would have been an easy run in. So it was it was almost like old ghosts were coming back. In my article in the Roar this week, I talked about for 1 hour, they played like their forefathers. The All Blacks literally played a very good match, but it wasn't based on anything like smoke and mirrors. It wasn't a game plan that Razor devised that was so spectacular. It was actually play really, really good rugby and let the Springboks kind of hype themselves up too much, try to do too many things, and then that lost ball, LOST, lost ball, that presents itself in rugby like in no other sport. Those turnovers are deadly if you have someone ready to rumble. And so it was quick. Every single pass the All Blacks threw in that period of time was so perfect. It was so clean. It put the ball right in front of the guy and led him into a hole. Unlike some of ours, where someone has to stop and move and catch back, and it stops momentum. Everything was spot on. TJ Perenara was hitting Damien, who was hitting Jordy Barrett. And then the other thing is an interception try. You can always look at it as lucky. And you take away that interception try and the whole game is different. Like, what if we finish that move and we score and then, they don't score? It's a 14-point swing, right? But we did that by having the same move, I think 4 times in a row. And Damien was standing and, discus throwing. Talk about Ben Jason Dixon making a mistake. Here's a guy who's 80 tests in making an elementary mistake. So I do think the Boks can do so many things differently better. So I'm not taking away from the All Blacks. And I don't think the Boks will ever exit that badly. And I don't think they're going to throw a 3 skip pass interception this week at Cape Town. They're just not going to, right? There could be other errors, different kinds, but I don't think they're going to do those ones. But the All Blacks had to be good enough to feast on the error. So you drop the food, I'm going to eat it. And they did it. And then you were in the point where you thought, if the All Blacks just kept doing that, they would have won the match. So what did they do wrong? They started playing not to lose. So literally, it was a flipped script. We've been there. We've done that. The Boks have done, counterattack, get in there, be ahead, and then lose it because they, try to too much rely on statistics and percentages and playing the right way in the right place. Sometimes you just keep trying to win, and you win.
You said, I think moving on seamlessly to the next subject is, you said they lost it because they tried to play not to lose. I think they lost it when the benches came on. That's where the difference is. The starting team versus the starting team, very evil, very even, very equal, very close to each other. Bench, huge discrepancy. I think that was a huge difference.
Yeah, I kind of set the metric of, because of the selections, you have Pollard, Etzebeth, Koch, Marks, and that Kwacha on the bench. With Ulrich Low, he played a blinder in my opinion. You load that up, then I thought, and I said, the All Blacks have to be up by a converted try at Oranges or they're going to lose. To me, it was that palpable, was that obvious. And the business back in New Zealand today and yesterday was Razor is not using the bench with any kind of tactical awareness. It was more like, okay, we got these 15 guys, they're our best, and then we're going to get some guys that will, come on when we're tired. It was kind of old school. The whole thing was old school. I mean, it almost worked, but it did seem like there was no specific holes that they were bringing in to fill in. And what I said in my article was there was no real backline threat from bringing Mark Talea in place of another wing. I mean, what does that give you? He cannot create anything. He's not going to run from 10 meters from his line and score. And so that was a loss. Carlos Ratima doesn't improve on Perenara. And and Anton Leonard-Brown looks slow. So you literally had 3 backs coming on. You have no one to counter Kwacha and Low. So you're losing out on the forward shift, and there's nothing you really bring. What you needed was a Bowden Barrett to come off the bench, or Damian McKenzie to come off the bench, and someone else to start. Then you would have the ability to unlock the Bok D, and then you could have played to win. And because you know that at any point in time at 27-17, had the All Blacks scored again, they would have won, because then it would have been a bridge too far. If you score a try, you score 5 points and you miss, and now it's 32-17, you're gonna win. So it came down to that point in time about 11 minutes to go and then 5 minutes to go, where all the scoring was being done, all the territory was being done, and the All Blacks forgot that one big thing is you cannot play against the Boks down the stretch in your own 22 or near it. You just cannot. You cannot do that. And they didn't exit. They forgot to exit. When I was running a firm one time, I was so annoyed by everyone talking about the wrong things. We were talking about the curtains. We had two people having a fight over here. We were talking about egos. And I just gathered everyone and I said, remember a long time ago when people used to dive in the ocean and they had a diver's helmet that was made of metal. It was bolted in, and you had metal shoes, and you had everything had to be airtight, and you had a hose, and that hose went all the way to the shore. There was some oak of the shore that you better be friends with, because he was your guy pumping oxygen down that air hose into your helmet. And with even one thing went wrong with that air hose, you would die. I said, we're not going to talk about anything unless it's an air hose issue. From now on, if you come into my office and you talk about something, I'll go, is it an air hose? I want it to be that clear. I bought a diver's helmet like that and put it on my bookcase behind me. And I would say, is it an air hose? I felt like what happened was for 62 minutes, the All Blacks knew where their air hose was, and their bolts were in nice, and everything was tight, and they knew exactly where they were getting the oxygen from. And then for 18 minutes, or maybe there was 3 minutes in there where it was parity, and then for the final 12 or 13 minutes, it was Springboks going, oh yeah, we know where our oxygen comes from. We're going to go back to our DNA. We're going to cram it down your throat, and we're just going to make you suffer. And it was almost like the All Blacks were watching a movie in which they were losing, and they couldn't stop the movie.
Well, that's an interesting thing. I wanted to ask you about that. The Tony Brown way and the Springbok way, let's call it that, just for sake of reference.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
So we started playing around and throwing discus throws, like you said, playing expansively and wide when we shouldn't have. We weren't ready for it. We didn't deserve it. That we didn't earn it. That's the word. I hate it when people say that, but it's true. It's a cliche because it's true. And then when it didn't work, we went back to the DNA way. What does it say to us that we went back to our normal old style, luck some them until we win kind of a thing? What does it say about the success or future of the Tony Brown way?
It's just time, place, and manner. It's the how, when. You can still do those things, but it's got to be at the right time. The discernment between when you do that and the other thing is the key. I do think you need to have a plan B. You need to have a Tony ball that kicks in. I do think Tony ball works within the overall structure of Bok ball, but it can never be Boks trying to play Tony ball. It's got to be, a little bit of Tony ball on the side. And if evidence is as you get up to the top, against Ireland in Durban, what did we do to score 18 consecutive points? We played what we know how to play, and then we could do it. Is it nice to have Loftus? Is it nice to have that kind of afternoon? Yeah, but it's not always going to happen for you. And at some point in time, if you fall behind, you can still get back into a game with time as your friend instead of time as your enemy. What happens is if you have to get into the 22 using so much effort, it just takes too much time. Give me a scrum penalty followed by a line-out penalty or a mole, collapse that's against you. Give me 14 penalties to 5. That was the count. Because the quickest way to get in is to do something, win a penalty, because you have to win it, and then have Sasha bang it in 5 meters out, and then you score and you win. That's most efficient. And rugby still comes down to efficiency. Who wins the wars? If I'm using militaristic, it's the best supply chain. It's the person who can move the most armaments to the front. It's not like who's got the bravest, approach, or who can ride a horse really fast. That's not going to win you anything. So I do think rugby has an amassing power, a shock, a battle of annihilation, where you can get your enemy to get on the right field of battle and then squash him. It's not about moving to it's too wide too quickly. I know what you mean about cliches, earn the right and all that. But there is a steamroller effect that you do need to happen. So if you see the carries by Visa, who was just on fire, by the way, and then you have a carry by Low. The effect of having someone get over the line first, the effect of that first carry and that second carry doing that, then the elasticity of that works. And I think that's exactly how the All Blacks scored, by the way, is they kind of did have a couple of good hard carries by Ari Savea that springboarded what you saw later with Caleb Clark. So I do think that's an adage that still holds true in rugby and always will.
Certain Cars has a wide selection of vehicles available at certaincars.co.za and at our branches at the Casino and Mainland. With over 30 years of trust and excellence, Certain Cars is your #1 nationwide dealership. With over 95% customer satisfaction, our hand-picked cars will ensure that you find your dream car from one of the top brands available at Certain Cars. Certain Cars, the better way to buy and sell cars.
Okay, just a last word on that subject. We start with Tony Ball, then we go to plan B, to Bok Rugby, if you want to call it that. Should it be the other way around? We just pound away at them, like you said, with Jasper Wiese, and then finish them off with a flourish and some fancy balls, and when they're tired, everything else. Are we not doing it the wrong way around? Putting the cart before the horse kind of a thing.
I think unpredictability is still important, though. So I would say if you could find the right recipe, it's where your opponent is not entirely sure. I think feints, F-E-I-N-Ts, are important in rugby. So I think some of those do come off. It's just that as you get to playing against number 1 or number 2 or number 3, I think you just there's just things you do. It's like when you're playing any sport against the best, you take a few things off. Everyone will say that. Whatever your game plan and how elaborate it was, whether you're boxing or playing tennis or playing anything, you actually go back to your basics. And it turns out the basics are there for a reason. It doesn't mean you play pure percentages, because I think being able to know when something's 45-55 versus 10-90 is important too. So, there are things that are on. I think there were moments where it was clear that it was on, and you just have a skill error. Then I don't blame my players for that, because if they recognized the right thing, they saw the space, and then someone drops it, it's not the fault of the guy who threw the offload. In the case of Ben Jason Dixon, that was his fault, because not only was it not on, it wasn't really a good offload. And it didn't have any, like Jasper couldn't have known that it was going to happen. So that's not sympathetic. But I think in general, you do want to have the box be more unpredictable, because when you're the champ, everyone's chasing you. What did we do when the All Blacks were so good from 2009 through 2016? Everyone was trying to find a way to study them, predict them. When Ireland went on a 17-test win streak, we all studied Ireland. We became a lot more well-versed in what Ireland did. And so obviously everyone's sitting there thinking, almost obsessing on us and saying, how do we beat this machine? So they're going to find a way, because that's how sport works. So you do want to have an ability, I think, to bring what Tony's bringing. I think that part of the problem is when you have that young a 10, that young a 15, then they're just going to make a few decision errors. And we in the stands are not going to notice them as errors, because they're going to oh, that sounds fun. They did something. They made a break. But you might be going on a blind alley, and you might have been better off at that moment to kick. I haven't looked at the stats yet. I should have, sorry. But it looked like to me that the All Blacks were playing better when they were kicking better and kicking more. And so, yeah, you got to know when it's on and when it's not on.
I want to talk to you about the other general, about Rassie. Not so much about the game, but what's happening off the field lately. On Saturday's press conference, which I didn't attend, he took on Ken Borland about the haphazard way. He described the Tuesday press conference as haphazard, and Rassie took him on quite a few times, having little digs at him and jabs at him. And I'm probably going to get a dig or a jab now for what I'm saying. And then also those guys in New Zealand, Israel Dag and his partner, they going off about Rassie being Jabba the Hutt. And then apologizing to Jabba the Hutt for comparing Rassie to him. I mean, that's a bit, a bit in bad taste, don't you think? What's your thinking about Rassie's demeanor off the field lately? Is there any truth to that kind of accusation or perception, maybe, that he's maybe becoming a bit of an emperor now?
Yeah. Oh, I think I think to some extent Rassie's taking us on a journey with him. And sometimes he's taking the piss too, taking the mickey out of it. I don't always think that it's so literal. I think sometimes he's just speaking the way he does. And I think also you have to always factor in that he's working in second language. And I think you have to take all those factors in. That being said, and I am a friend with Sumo, by the way, Sumo Stevenson, but he went way wrong on that. Sumo did. That's just far off. Like, there's a way to sledge, as they say, the Kiwis would say, or poke at someone and be funny. That wasn't funny. And they didn't do even a modicum of research about what he has physically going on, or what he might have to take for that condition. And plus, it's just, not true. I mean, he's not a young guy, but he's at his age, being out there and throwing the ball around, taking drop kicks, maybe even doing some tackle practice. Rassie's doing fine. I mean, we all have an uncle or a brother-in-law that looks about the same. So, yeah, that was out of bounds. What he's doing with it, I don't know. I think Rassie's, to some extent, matured enough now where he uses everything as a tool or an edge. Everything. Like, take the pressure off his players, he'll do it. Throw some smoke over here, the smoke grenade over there, so that you don't see this over here. I think that's also part of Rassie's makeup. He can also work. He's functional in ways that you and I or other people are not able to. I have to really kind of make sure I'm healthy for me to work right. Doesn't always seem like he has to. So I think, maybe that's too much nuance. Sorry, but I do think, he's taken us on a journey. He's been very honest about his childhood and about what he's working through. Everyone I know that's ever had to struggle with addiction and a family member or had a father that was that volatile up and down, you're never sure if he loves you or not, or when you're about to be in trouble. That was such a naked, revelation in that book. I still think Rassie's working through all that. I wish him the best. I wish him and his family the best. And I want people to be happy in rugby. I don't want people to view rugby as another paparazzi thing where we tear each other down because we have a personality. But I think there's something weird about our rivalries right now in rugby. They're bitter. People are poisonous. My dad told me something that I thought was very smart when I was young. He said, he had fixed ideas and he thought he knew what he believed. But he said, before you battle another idea or have an enemy or you want to oppose something, don't pick the worst representative of that religion or that theology or that political party or your rival team. Don't pick the worst and then compare your best to their worst. Pick the best, take the best view of something and then see what you think. And right now it seems like everyone's going, oh, but that guy on Twitter said that crazy thing, But is that really what New Zealanders and South Africans are saying about each other? I saw two teams that respect each other a lot. I saw a good spirit. I didn't see Razor Robertson and Scott Barrett come out all, bitter. And I thought every time the Springboks, since Rassie has turned a new leaf, I think we've been taking our losses, I don't know, sorry to say it, but like a man. And so I think it's fine. And I think inventing rivalries is cool if they're within what I call rugby humor, traditional, sports rivalries. I think it gets a little bit too far sometimes. They're trying to psychoanalyze everybody.
I want to ask you a question that I didn't tell you I'm going to ask you, that I was thinking about. And, I sort of alluded it over the weekend. When I speak to Andre Pretorius, as I speak in Afrikaans, I'm different to when I'm speaking to you in English, which is my second language. You noticed it. And I'm referring now to Rassie. You mentioned it in passing, but it's actually a much bigger thing than people realize. When you're working your second language, it's hard work, especially if you don't speak it on a very, you don't speak it very often. And it does make a difference. I can clearly see when Rassie speaks Afrikaans and when he speaks English, the way that he comes across is completely different. And I think, to me, I can relate to that to a degree. How big a thing do you think that is?
It is. Some people I know are equal in 3 languages, but they're still different in each language. So even if it wasn't about proficiency, like even if you got to the point where your English brain and your Afrikaans brain was exactly equal, you would still have a different personality because one came from childhood, from the kitchen, from the barn, wherever you learned it. And then the other one comes from business and from making deals. So you're more conciliatory. I speak Spanish pretty well, and apparently I come off like like an insane baby. And if I'm speaking German, I sound like I'm about to hurt you. So it's all different. I do think the bluntness and what I would call, South African irony is strongest in sarcasm, and it's weakest in what I'll call passive aggressive irony. So I think Rassie comes across really strong, and then when he tries to do irony, it's just completely sarcasm. And both of them are hard in a medium to come across because you can just clip 5 seconds of that and he looks like a dous. So I don't know what to say about that. I don't want to give anyone a pass. I like Rassie that he takes on English and doesn't seem to hide behind it. And I think he's growing. Like I said, it's a journey. I think the end Rassie is not the same as the beginning Rassie. He has said many times that he used to be more arrogant than he is now, that he had everything handed to him. He felt like he was the golden child. So, I'm looking forward to the next chapter, what he looks like when he's trying to get this thing going. I do think in general there's too much gotchaism as well, like catching someone in some little phrase that then they go run crazy with, and we don't do that on this thing. But I mean on speed. So when I see your Afrikaans and I watched the one with Andre, you speak like with a machine gun. You're like rattle tattle. You're like the Gatling gun, and in English you're more measured. But that might end up to be almost a different personality. Like, you're seeking the exact right phrase in English. In Afrikaans, it's just spouting it. And I don't really think Rassie is not confident in English. I just think sometimes he really mixes his idioms up and he comes off, way too sarcastic.
Yeah. No, that's what I'm saying. It's like he's not trying to be funny or anything or weird or, obnoxious for that matter. It's just the way that it comes across. And that's that, like you said. Different personalities, and I can relate to that directly. Okay, Harry, this week, Hendrik Cronje just let us know that Rassie's only going to announce his team on Thursday, apparently. So you and I, on the next Lekker Rugby Pod on Thursday, we'll talk about the team for a change. That's going to be something different.
Yes! I like it. I like that we can talk about it as a fresh thing. And I also think it's funny that people are getting irate right now. Like, what's he doing on Thursday? Like, he invented the Tuesday drop. So he's allowed to do the normal Thursday, announcement. I do think there's plenty of suspense around that and changes and a discussion about changes, and that will be interesting to see.
All right. Okay, Harry, we'll talk on Thursday. I'm looking forward to it, man. Enjoy the rest of your trip and down to Cape Town. We'll talk soon. Thanks.
Yeah.
This is the Lekker Rugby Pod with Harry Jones and MV Welman.